Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you inspiring tales of love, resilience, and unexpected connections. Today's story takes us into the heart of New York City, where a powerful CEO, disguised as an intern, and a determined young lawyer find themselves on a journey that transforms their lives. It's a tale of ambition, trust, and a love that grows against all odds. Join us as we unravel this heartwarming story filled with life lessons and unforgettable moments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story and discover the magic of life stories. Grace Hamilton was the kind of woman whose presence commanded attention without the need for words. As the chairwoman of the Hamilton family empire, her legacy was etched into the foundations of every courtroom and law office in New York City. But behind her composed exterior, Grace harbored a deep concern that no amount of power or wealth could alleviate. Her grandson, James Hamilton, the brilliant yet enigmatic heir to the Hamilton legacy, was the source of her worries. For years, James had been the talk of the family firm not just for his unmatched intellect but for his mysterious nature. Few people had seen him in person, and even those who worked for the company knew him only through stories. He was a man of unparalleled ambition but was strikingly absent from the public eye. Grace often wondered if his reticence to form connections was a shield to protect himself or a barrier that kept others away. During her 3-month sabbatical from the company, Grace thought long and hard about James's future. At 32, he was set to take over the firm, but the chairwoman felt something essential was missing from his life. He needed someone who could ground him, someone who would love him for who he truly was, not for his wealth or family name. The idea sparked in her mind one evening, and she chuckled to herself at the audacity of it. If James wouldn't find love on his own, perhaps she could give him a little push. Grace returned to New York with a plan. Instead of re-entering the firm as the imposing chairwoman, she decided to slip in unnoticed. Disguised as an ordinary cleaner, it was bold and unconventional, but Grace believed it was the only way to see the company and its people for what they truly were when no one thought they were being watched. More importantly, it would allow her to quietly observe potential candidates for James's heart. The morning she arrived, dressed in plain clothes and wearing an old wristwatch she'd picked up from a thrift store, the atmosphere at the firm buzzed with its usual energy. She pushed her cleaning cart past busy lawyers engrossed in conversations, paralegals juggling files, and assistants rushing to meet deadlines. Most people barely noticed her, but there were exceptions. In the break room, a group of young women huddled together, their voices low but sharp enough to carry. "Who let her in?" one of them sneered, her polished nails tapping against her coffee cup. "That watch looks like it came from a flea market," another chimed in, rolling her eyes. Their laughter was loud and cruel, enough to make Grace pause. Grace said nothing at first, her sharp eyes taking in their mocking faces. But when one of the women stepped closer and accused her of trying to fit into a world above her station, Grace responded with calm dignity. "It's just an old watch," she said quietly. "Why does it matter to you?" Her words only fueled their jeers. And one woman, brash and overconfident, gave her a slight shove. Grace stumbled but caught herself before she could fall. Before the situation could escalate, a commanding voice cut through the room. "Enough." The voice belonged to Emily Carter, one of the firm's youngest yet most promising lawyers. She had an air of quiet authority, her sharp features softened by the compassion in her eyes. Crossing her arms, she addressed the group firmly. "What are you doing? Don't you have better things to do than bully someone who's just doing her job?" The women exchanged awkward glances, reluctant to back down entirely. One of them attempted a weak jab. "Look who's talking. Aren't you the one who got dumped for being too nosy? No wonder you're single." Emily's jaw tightened, but her composure didn't falter. "I wasn't dumped," she replied coolly. "I left him. I don't tolerate liars or cheaters. It's called self-respect. You should try it sometime." Her words stung, and the women muttered amongst themselves before dispersing. Emily turned to Grace, her expression softening. Are you all right? She asked gently. Grace nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Thank you, dear. I appreciate it. It's nothing. Emily shrugged. Let me know if anyone bothers you again. As Emily walked away, Grace watched her with a thoughtful gaze. There was something about her, something genuine and resilient. She's got a good heart. Grace murmured to herself. This one's special. Later that day, Grace approached Emily at her desk. Emily was immersed in her work. A stack of papers in front of her. Clearing her throat softly, Grace spoke. Excuse me, dear. May I have a moment of your time? Emily looked up. Surprised but not annoyed. She smiled warmly, recognizing the woman she'd defended earlier. Of course. How can I help you? Grace sat down, her eyes glinting with curiosity. I couldn't help but overhear earlier, she began delicately. You mentioned you're single. Would you mind if I asked why? Emily blinked, caught off guard but not offended. She gave a small laugh, uncertain if Grace was serious. That's kind of you to ask. But I'm not looking for love right now, she admitted. I've had my fair share of heartbreak. And I think I'm better off focusing on my career. Grace tilted her head, her tone gentle. Heartbreak? You're much too young to have gone through so much pain. Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping briefly before meeting Grace's again. A lot of men have let me down. My most recent boyfriend, he cheated on me. Right here in this office. I caught him. And it was humiliating. Grace's expression hardened for a moment. Her voice firm. You're right to be cautious, my dear. But not all men are the same. My grandson, for example, would never betray someone like that. Emily smiled politely, unsure how to respond. That's very sweet of you to say, she replied lightly. But I think I'm better off on my own for now. Grace gave her a knowing smile, her mind already turning with plans. If anyone could challenge Emily's belief, it was James. Grace Hamilton was not a woman to let go of an idea once it had taken root. After her conversation with Emily, she became even more convinced that this young woman, with her sharp intellect and compassionate heart, could be exactly what James needed in his life. The challenge was getting them to meet under circumstances where titles and wealth didn't cloud their judgment. But Grace was nothing if not resourceful. And her plan was already taking shape. The following morning, a new face appeared at the firm. James Hamilton, the heir to the family law firm and one of New York's most eligible bachelors, walked through the doors dressed not as a powerful executive but as a humble intern. In worn slacks and a simple button-down shirt, James blended seamlessly into the bustling office environment. His goal was to work unnoticed, to observe the people who made up the company he would one day lead. His grandmother had insisted this approach would teach him invaluable lessons about leadership. And James, though skeptical, had agreed. The office buzzed with its usual energy, but James's arrival did not go entirely unnoticed. His unassuming demeanor stood out, and a few raised eyebrows followed him as he moved quietly through the hallways. Yet, his introduction was uneventful, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Within hours, he found himself assigned to a case under none other than Emily Carter. Their first meeting was uneventful, marked by polite greetings and a professional exchange of ideas. Emily, ever focused, barely noticed James's quiet charm. To her, he was just another intern. But as the day wore on, she began to notice something unusual. The so-called intern had an uncanny understanding of legal principles. His insights were sharp, his suggestions on point, and his confidence, though subdued, hinted at someone far more experienced than he let on. You're surprisingly good at this, Emily said, glancing at him with a mixture of curiosity and approval. James chuckled, a boyish grin lighting up his face. I guess I've read a lot in my spare time. I've always been drawn to the intricacies of the law. Emily raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. Well, it's rare to see someone so new catch on so quickly. Keep it up. As the day turned into weeks, James and Emily found themselves working closely together on a particularly challenging case. Their professional collaboration quickly became something more personal. They began to share stories during their late nights in the office, learning about each other's lives, struggles, and ambitions. Emily, though cautious, found herself drawn to James's quiet confidence and genuine kindness. For James, Emily was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was determined, empathetic, and unapologetically herself. Her ability to navigate the challenges of her career while staying true to her values left him in awe. He admired her strength and resilience. But more than that, he admired her heart. Meanwhile, Grace, still disguised as a cleaner, observed their growing connection with satisfaction. Pushing her cart through the office, she would catch glimpses of their conversations, the easy laughter they shared, and the mutual respect that had formed between them. To her, it was the beginning of something truly special. But not everyone in the office was as supportive. Lisa Porter, Emily's longtime rival, watched the budding relationship with a mix of jealousy and disdain. Lisa had always prided herself on being the best, and she saw Emily's growing reputation as a threat. She began to spread whispers, her venomous words seeping into the cracks of the office's camaraderie. "Don't you think it's strange how close Emily is getting to the intern?" Lisa said one day, her voice dripping with mock innocence. "It's almost like she's trying to climb her way to the top." Her words reached Emily, but instead of responding with anger, she let them roll off her back. She had faced worse and wasn't about to let petty gossip distract her. James, however, noticed the subtle shift in Emily's demeanor and confronted her about it. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice low with concern. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "It's nothing I can't handle. People talk, it's part of the job." James frowned, his protective instincts flaring. "You shouldn't have to deal with that alone." Emily smiled softly, touched by his concern. "Thank you, James. But I've learned that actions speak louder than words. Let's just focus on the case." James nodded, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to do more. Grace, watching from the sidelines, saw the interaction and smiled to herself. The connection between them was growing stronger, and she knew it was only a matter of time before they both realized what she already knew: they were perfect for each other. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test their bond in ways neither of them could have predicted. The firm's bustling energy had always been its hallmark, a place where ambition and talent collided to produce remarkable results. However, as James and Emily's partnership flourished, so did the whispers around the office. Lisa Porter, ever ambitious and keenly aware of her diminishing spotlight, decided it was time to act. The thought of Emily surpassing her was intolerable, and Lisa was not one to let a rival rise unchecked. Lisa's jealousy burned brighter each day as she watched Emily work alongside James. She dismissed the intern as unremarkable, but the camaraderie and growing connection between the two infuriated her. To Lisa, it wasn't just about professional rivalry, it was personal. Emily's calm confidence and undeniable talent challenged everything Lisa thought she had mastered. And worse, it seemed everyone, including the mysterious new intern, was starting to notice Emily's brilliance. Lisa began planting seeds of doubt. In whispered conversations and offhand comments, she wove a web of innuendo aimed at tarnishing Emily's reputation. "It's just odd, isn't it?" she mused to a colleague one day. "She's spending all this extra time with an intern. Makes you wonder what she's really after." The whispers grew, fueled by Lisa's persistence. Soon, the office was buzzing with speculation. Emily, aware of the gossip but choosing to rise above it, focused on her work. She had faced worse in the past and refused to let petty rumors derail her. But James wasn't so calm. He noticed the sidelong glances and hushed conversations that followed Emily wherever she went. It angered him, but his current role as an intern meant he had to tread carefully. "I don't understand why they'd say those things," James said one evening as they stayed late to finalize a case presentation. His voice carried a note of frustration he rarely expressed. Emily shrugged. Her tone measured. People talk. James. It's part of working in an environment like this. When you stand out, you become a target. James leaned back in his chair. His brow furrowed. It's not right. You've worked harder than anyone here. They should see that. She smiled softly at his indignation, appreciating his loyalty. It's flattering that you care, but trust me, I've handled worse. The best response is to keep doing my job well. Meanwhile, Grace, still blending into the background as a cleaner, kept a watchful eye on the brewing tension. She saw how Emily remained composed under pressure and how James's quiet frustration betrayed his growing attachment to her. Grace's belief in their compatibility deepened. But she also sensed that Lisa's meddling wouldn't end with idle gossip. Her instincts proved correct when Lisa escalated her campaign against Emily. During a particularly high-stakes week, Lisa saw an opportunity to undermine her rival. She fabricated evidence suggesting that Emily had leaked confidential documents to a competing firm. The accusation was severe, and Lisa presented it with a confidence born from years of manipulation. In a team meeting, Lisa stood and, with feigned reluctance, shared her evidence. Emails, doctored to implicate Emily, were displayed on the projector screen. Gasps rippled through the room as Lisa detailed the supposed leak. It's disappointing, she said with a performative sigh. We all hold ourselves to the highest standards here. And I would never have expected this from someone like Emily. Emily sat frozen, her mind racing as she scanned the falsified documents. The whispers started immediately, the weight of the accusation heavy in the room. James, sitting nearby, clenched his fists under the table. Every instinct told him to speak up, but he knew he couldn't without jeopardizing his cover. Instead, he caught Emily's eye, his steady gaze offering silent reassurance. After the meeting, James approached Emily in the hallway. We'll figure this out, he said firmly, his voice low but resolute. Emily gave him a small, grateful smile. Thank you. I need to clear my name. This could ruin everything I've worked for. Unknown to either of them, Grace had already begun to act. She called on her extensive network of connections, discreetly gathering resources to support Emily. Behind the scenes, she also began investigating Lisa, suspecting there was more to the story than what had been presented. The days that followed were tense. Emily worked tirelessly to prove her innocence, combing through emails, reviewing system logs, and seeking out surveillance footage. Each late night at the office only strengthened her resolve and deepened her bond with James. His quiet encouragement and unwavering belief in her buoyed her spirits when the weight of the accusations threatened to crush her. Grace, too, observed the pair with pride. Despite the challenges, their connection grew stronger, and their shared determination to fight the injustice revealed the depth of their character. But Lisa wasn't done. Sensing her fabricated evidence might be unraveling, she prepared to take more drastic steps. The storm was far from over, and Emily and James would need all their strength and each other to weather it. The tension in the firm reached a breaking point as Lisa's fabricated accusations continued to cast a shadow over Emily's reputation. Emily, however, was not the type to surrender. With unwavering determination, she pored over every piece of evidence, searching for the proof she needed to clear her name. But the pressure was mounting, and whispers of doubt among her colleagues began to sting. James watched the situation unfold with a mix of frustration and helplessness. He wanted nothing more than to stand up and defend Emily openly, to use his authority as the CEO to shut down the baseless rumors. Yet, his disguise as an intern restrained him. Each day, his respect and admiration for Emily deepened as she faced adversity with grace and strength. But the weight of his secret was beginning to take its toll. One evening, while reviewing surveillance footage from the office's security logs, Emily's diligence paid off. She found the breakthrough she'd been searching for, a recording of Lisa accessing the supposedly leaked files late at night. Cross-referencing timestamps and email metadata, she confirmed what she had suspected all along: Lisa had fabricated the entire scandal. The following morning, armed with her findings, Emily presented her case to the senior partners during a tense meeting. As she walked into the room, the air was thick with anticipation. Lisa sat confidently at the table, her smug expression faltering slightly when she saw the determined look on Emily's face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emily began, her voice steady but firm, "I have evidence that clears my name and exposes the truth behind these false accusations." She handed out copies of her findings, walking the room through the timeline of events and pointing out the inconsistencies in Lisa's claims. As she displayed the surveillance footage, audible gasps filled the room. The senior partners exchanged uneasy glances, and Lisa's composure began to crack. "This is ridiculous," Lisa snapped, her voice trembling with anger. She must have faked this footage, but the senior partner leading the meeting silenced her with a sharp look. "The evidence is clear, Lisa," he said coldly. "You violated the firm's policies and betrayed the trust of your colleagues. This behavior is unacceptable." As the weight of the decision sank in, Lisa's face twisted with fury. "You don't understand," she shouted. "She doesn't belong here. She's nothing compared to me." Before anyone could respond, James, who had been silently observing from the back of the room, rose to his feet. His calm demeanor commanded the attention of everyone present. "That's enough," he said, his voice steady but carrying an authority that silenced the room. Lisa turned to him, her disdain evident. "What do you know? You're just an intern." James took a deep breath and stepped forward. "No, I'm not," he said firmly. "My name is James Hamilton, and I am the CEO of this firm." The room fell into stunned silence. All eyes turned to James, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and shock. Lisa's defiant stance crumbled as the realization of who she had been mocking hit her. James continued, his gaze unwavering. "I came here undercover to understand how this firm operates from the ground up, to see the culture firsthand. What I've witnessed is both inspiring and disappointing. Emily Carter represents everything this firm should stand for: integrity, hard work, and resilience. The same cannot be said for those who sought to undermine her." Emily stared at James, her emotions a whirlwind of confusion and awe. She barely registered the senior partners dismissing Lisa, who was escorted out of the room, her protests fading into the background. When the room cleared, she turned to James, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're James Hamilton?" He nodded, his expression softening. "I am. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want my position to cloud our connection. I needed you to see me as I am, not as the CEO." Emily's mind raced, trying to process the revelation. Yet, as she looked into his eyes, the sincerity and vulnerability she had always admired were still there. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. James reached for her hand, his voice filled with quiet resolve. "Say you'll trust me. I know I've kept a lot from you, but my feelings for you have always been genuine." For a moment, Emily hesitated. Then, with a small smile, she nodded. "I'll try." James smiled in return, his heart swelling with relief. As they left the room together, side by side, Grace watched from a distance, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. The truth was out, and the real work of building their relationship and the future of the firm was just beginning. In the days following the dramatic revelation, the atmosphere at the Hamilton law firm shifted. Whispers about James's identity as the CEO replaced the gossip about Emily. But the once icy stares directed at her softened into respect. Her steadfast determination and integrity had not only cleared her name but earned her admiration throughout the firm. Yet, amidst the professional whirlwind, the dynamic between James and Emily took center stage in both their lives. For Emily, James's revelation was a lot to process. The man she thought was a humble, promising intern had turned out to be the head of the firm. A billionaire no less. But what troubled her most wasn't the deception, it was her feelings. The kindness, humor, and humility she had grown to admire in James hadn't been an act. That was who he truly was. And that truth both scared and excited her. James, on the other hand, felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He no longer had to hide who he was. And Emily hadn't turned away from him despite his secret. Their late nights at the office became more than just collaborative work sessions, they were filled with laughter, meaningful conversations, and moments that hinted at something deeper. One evening, as they worked together on a particularly challenging case, James leaned back in his chair and observed Emily as she scribbled notes. Her focus was unwavering, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're incredible. You know that," he said softly. Emily looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" He shrugged, smiling. "The way you think. The way you tackle problems, it's inspiring. I've worked with a lot of brilliant people, but none like you." A faint blush crept across her cheeks, and she quickly returned her attention to her notes. "You give me too much credit," she muttered, though her smile betrayed her modesty. James reached out, gently covering her hand with his. "I mean it. Emily. You're one of a kind." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade. Emily's heart raced, her usual composure wavering. She felt the weight of his words, the sincerity in his gaze, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself believe that she was worthy of being seen and valued. But Emily's cautious nature still held her back. Over coffee the next morning, she confided in Grace, who had finally dropped her disguise but remained deeply involved in both their lives. "I don't know what to do, Grace," Emily admitted. His wonderful. But it's complicated. He's the CEO. I'm just a woman who's already captured his heart." Grace interrupted, her sharp eyes softening. "Emily, James doesn't care about titles or positions. He sees you for who you are, and he values that more than anything." Emily hesitated, her thoughts tangled with doubt. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? Grace smiled knowingly. "Love isn't about finding someone exactly like you. It's about finding someone who complements you. Someone who makes you stronger. And, my dear, James has never been happier than he is with you." Grace's words lingered in Emily's mind over the following days. And as she spent more time with James, her walls began to crumble. She saw the man behind the title. The boy who had endured loss and grown into someone kind, thoughtful, and deeply caring. As their bond deepened, Grace, ever the matchmaker, began dropping hints about the future. "You two make a lovely couple," she said one evening at dinner, her eyes twinkling mischievously. "But you know what would make this even better?" Emily tilted her head. Curious. "What's that?" "Great-grandchildren," Grace declared with a laugh. "I'm not getting any younger. You know." Emily's face turned bright red, and she sputtered. "Grace, we're not even." She glanced at James, who was chuckling, clearly amused. "Don't rush her, Grandma," James teased, placing a reassuring hand on Emily's. "We're taking it one step at a time." Grace waved him off playfully. "Nonsense. Life is short. If you love each other, what are you waiting for?" Emily covered her face with her hands, her embarrassment softened by the warmth of the moment. James squeezed her shoulder gently, his laughter infectious. Despite her initial discomfort, Emily couldn't deny that Grace's words had struck a chord. As the evening wound down, James walked Emily home, the cool night air wrapping around them. "You know," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "Grandma might be a little pushy, but she's not entirely wrong." Emily raised an eyebrow, amused. "About what?" "The grandchildren?" James chuckled. "About love. About not wasting time when you know what you want." They stopped at her door, and James took both her hands in his. Emily, I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for certain: I want to face it with you. Her heart swelled at his words, and for the first time, she allowed herself to fully embrace the possibility of a future with him. Smiling, she replied, "Then let's take it one step at a time." As they said goodnight, both felt a newfound sense of certainty. Their hearts aligned as they stepped into the next chapter of their lives. Little did they know, the greatest challenges and joys were still ahead. Emily Carter was no stranger to challenges, but the days that followed her and James's deepening relationship tested her strength and resilience like never before. The office buzzed with news of her vindication and James's revealed identity as the CEO. Respect replaced whispers, and many colleagues who had doubted her now went out of their way to congratulate her on clearing her name. Yet amidst the newfound admiration, there remained a shadow of tension. Lisa Porter might have been dismissed, but her influence lingered, and the professional world was never short on skeptics. Emily carried herself with quiet determination, her focus unwavering, as she worked alongside James on high-profile cases. Their dynamic became the talk of the firm. Their collaboration was seamless, their chemistry undeniable, but it was their mutual respect and shared values that stood out most. One evening, as they walked home after a long day at the firm, James broke the silence. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice contemplative. Emily glanced at him, curious. "About what?" "About us. About what comes next." He paused, his gaze earnest. "I don't want to rush you, but I know how I feel. Emily, I want a future with you." Her heart skipped a beat at his words, but she hesitated, her practical nature urging caution. "James, our lives are complicated. The firm, your position, it's not exactly the easiest situation." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I know it's not easy, but I also know that nothing worth having ever is. You've faced every challenge with grace and strength. You've inspired me in ways I can't even put into words. If we're together, we can handle whatever comes our way." Emily looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity that had drawn her to him from the start. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said softly, "let's see where this goes." Their relationship blossomed in the weeks that followed. James introduced Emily to his world beyond the firm, sharing moments of vulnerability and stories from his past. She learned about the challenges he faced growing up after losing his parents and the pressure of living up to the Hamilton name. In turn, Emily opened up about her own struggles, including her past heartbreaks and the self-doubt she often wrestled with. Grace watched their growing bond with a satisfaction that only deepened her determination to push them toward the next step. At family dinners, she continued to drop hints, her mischievous smile making Emily blush and James laugh. One evening, as they dined at Grace's sprawling Manhattan apartment, the conversation inevitably turned toward the future. "You know," Grace said, casually sipping her wine, "I've been thinking about redecorating one of the guest rooms." Emily raised an eyebrow, wary of Grace's seemingly innocent remark. "Oh, what for?" "For a nursery." "Of course," Grace said, her tone light but her eyes twinkling with mischief. "It's about time we started planning for the next generation." Emily's cheeks flushed, and James chuckled, clearly enjoying his grandmother's antics. "Grandma, you're relentless," he said, shaking his head. "Give us some time." Grace leaned back in her chair, her expression unapologetic. "Life doesn't wait, my dear. But fine. I'll let you two figure it out on your own." Despite Grace's playful meddling, Emily found herself reflecting on the idea. The thought of building a life with James, of creating a family together, stirred something deep within her, a hope she hadn't dared to entertain before. Their world shifted further one quiet morning when Emily, feeling unwell, visited the doctor. As she sat in the office, nervously waiting for her results, her thoughts wandered to James and the life they were building. When the doctor returned with a gentle smile, Emily's heart skipped. "Congratulations," the doctor said. "You're pregnant." Emily's breath caught, her mind racing with a mix of emotions: joy, disbelief, and nervous anticipation. Later that evening, she shared the news with James, her voice trembling. "James," she began, her eyes glistening. "We're going to have a baby." James froze, his expression shifting from surprise to pure, unfiltered joy. He swept her into his arms, laughing. "Are you serious?" "Emily, that's incredible." As they embraced, Emily felt a sense of completeness she hadn't known was possible. Their journey had been far from conventional, but it had led them to this moment, a new beginning filled with promise and love. When they shared the news with Grace, her reaction was as exuberant as they had expected. She clapped her hands in delight, her eyes shining with tears. "I knew it," she declared. "You two were meant to be. This is the best gift I could have ever hoped for." The months that followed were a whirlwind of preparations and milestones. At the firm, Emily and James continued to shine as a team, balancing their professional and personal lives with the kind of partnership that inspired those around them. At home, they navigated the joys and challenges of impending parenthood, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. As the story of James and Emily spread throughout the firm, they became an emblem of resilience and love, a testament to the idea that true connections could thrive even in the most unexpected circumstances. Grace, ever the matriarch, looked on with pride, knowing that her plan had not only brought two people together but had created a foundation for a legacy built on love, respect, and understanding. And as James and Emily looked ahead to the arrival of their child, they knew that their journey was only just beginning. Together, they were ready to face whatever the future held, their hearts united by the trials they had endured and the love they had found. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of James and Emily. From unexpected beginnings to a love story that overcame challenges and grew stronger with time. Their journey inspired everyone around them. With Grace by their side, they welcomed their first child into a world filled with love, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. Their story wasn't just about romance, it was a reminder of the power of resilience, empathy, and standing up for what is right. Together, they built a life that was not only about success but about cherishing the people who mattered most. Thank you for following their journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that celebrate life's unexpected turns and the bonds that make it all worthwhile. See you in the next video on life stories.